Okay, so now that you understand how to use weight paint mode, we're now going to take a look at the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to rigging, and that is understanding this concept of bone rolls. So first what we need to do is actually reset up this file. So go under File, do Open, and go ahead and open the Rigging Lesson 01 f.blend. This is where we had just mirrored the bones. So what you want to do is first make sure that this is set back on median point and switch to object mode over here on the figure. Make sure this is on global, and this should be set on increment. Do Shift C to place the 3D cursor in the center. Do Control middle mouse button to just zoom in a bit over here. Now go ahead and click on the armature over here and make sure that you are on the octahedral mode, and we're going to keep the axis and names still enabled. Now go ahead and click on the figure and drag it onto the armature and choose with automatic weights. Go ahead and now click on the modifiers tab, and over here we're going to collapse all these, and actually on the subdivision modifier you want to make sure that this is on level 1. Bring up the armature modifier and make sure that you have both of these options checked over here, and we should be good to go over here. Go ahead and open this up, and what we're going to do is actually now resave this file. So we're going to do under File, Save As, and now save it again as Rigging Lesson 01 g.blend. Okay, so in order to understand this concept of bone rolls, the first thing that I want you to do is go ahead and zoom in on the figure and do Shift middle mouse button and bring the human head into focus. Now we want to be in pose mode on the armature, so we can easily do this in the outliner by clicking on a pose, or you can select it from here. Go ahead and click on this head bound. Now I want you to notice two things over here. First thing is that when you are in pose mode, when you are rotating a bone, its default behavior is that it can only rotate on its head. Okay, now the second thing, you'll notice that we are in the front orthographic view. Now if we press the R key to rotate, you'll notice that we can rotate the head perfectly left and right with this bone. Right click to cancel. Go ahead and press the 3 key to go to the right view. Now if we press the R key to rotate, we will be rotating this bone on the head, and it will move the head forward and backward. Press the R key, forward and backward. Right click to cancel. Now the reason this is working this way is because the default behavior of Blender is that when you switch to rotate mode, it's going to do it based on how you are looking at your object. Okay, so this means that if you do the middle mouse button to rotate the figure like this in a 3/4 view and press the R key, you'll notice that the rotation is just based on the view. So now the head is actually rotating on these odd angles. It's not doing a true forward and backward and left and right. Right click to cancel. Okay, now if of course you press the 5 key to go into perspective, it'll still behave the same way. If you press the R key, it's just based on the view. Right click to cancel. I'm going to press the 5 key to go back into orthographic view. Go ahead and do middle mouse button so you can see the figure kind of like this. Now if we want to take complete control over how to work with this bone, we will need to work with the axis that is being displayed on the tail of this bone. Now the first thing that I want you to notice over here is that the X, Z, and Y that is being displayed over here on the tail of this bone is actually coming from the normal. If you go to stick over here, you'll notice that over here this is global, local, and normal. It's the normal on the edge. You can see that the y-axis is matching the x-axis is matching and the z-axis is matching. Okay, go ahead and switch to global over here. Now when you switch to pose mode, in order to use the axis that is being displayed over here, in pose mode it doesn't actually use normal, it switches that to local. So if you do local, you'll notice now it matches. That's just the way it works here. In pose mode, the normal is actually the local. Okay, now go ahead and switch this back to global. Now if we switch this back to octahedral, if we want to rotate this head on the x-axis, we have to press the R key and then press the X key. You can see that the head is going to move forward and backward. But right now what's happening is that the x-axis that is being displayed by this red line is actually the global x-axis, which is coming from the 3D grid. Right click to cancel. Go ahead and zoom out. Notice that it is this global axis that it is using. Now you'll notice that over here the x-axis is actually matching the global x-axis. And the reason for this is because, as I've said, when you add objects in Blender, the local axis that belongs to the object will always match the global axis. That is default behavior. So if you zoom out over here and switch it to object mode on the armature, go to the object tab and turn on axis, you can see that the x-axis is matching. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you're clear on this so you don't get confused by this. Notice that the y is going this direction and the z is going up. Now go ahead and switch back to pose mode. Go ahead and go back to this bound. So now when we press the R key and press the X key, I want you to notice on the header what it's saying. Go ahead and press the R key and press the X key. So you see that it says along the global axis. Now if we want to use the axis that is being displayed on the tail, we actually have to press the X key again. Now it says along a local. So now when we rotate the head, you can see that it goes forward and backward. Right click to cancel. So in the same way, if we want to rotate this head left and right on the head of this bone on the Z axis, we have to press the R key, press the Z one time and then the second time. This is now rotating on the Z axis that is being displayed on the tail. Right click to cancel. Same is going to be true for the Y axis. Press the R key, press the Y key one time. This is the global, this is the local. Now we can twist the head left and right. Right click to cancel. But here you can see that right now we have complete control over how we want to rotate this human head. So if you press the R key 2 times and position the head in any angle like this, we can still control the movement of this head based on these axes. So if you press the R key, press the X key 2 times, notice that we can go forward and backward. Right click to cancel. Do Alt R to reset the rotation. Go ahead and zoom out. Now notice that if you click on this bone and press the R key 2 times and just position the figure like this, we still have control over the head. We can click over here and press the R key and press the X key 2 times and still rotate it forward and backward in this way. Same thing for the Z. Press the R key, press the Z 2 times. You can do left and right. Right click to cancel. Okay. Now, of course, at any time you can press the R key 2 times and position the head any way that you want. But the point here is that we have control over how we want to work with this head based on these aligned axes. Okay. Now press the A key to select everything. Do Alt R to reset. Press the 1 key over here. And now go ahead and do the middle mouse button to rotate again and just zoom in. Go ahead and now switch to edit mode. Click on the body of this mount. Open this up. Now you'll notice that the reason this is happening is because of how the bone roll is set. Now, the simplest way to understand this idea about bone rolls is basically Blender's asking you how do you want to work with your bone in pose mode so it makes it easy to pose your character. That's all this is. Notice that if you click over here and set the bone roll like this, right? Notice that it's going to be very difficult to work with this head now. If we switch to pose mode, Notice that if we want to rotate this head on the x-axis on its local, we have to press the R key, press the X key 2 times. We can no longer do front and backwards, right? Of course, when the figure is like this, if you press the R key, press the X key 1 time, this is just the global axis. But that global axis is not going to be useful when you click over here, press the R key 2 times, rotate again like this. Now, how do you move the head forward and backward, right? If you press the R key, press the X key 2 times over here, you're going to be rotating like this, right? And if you press the R key, press the X key, this is on the global. You'll see that it's not possible. Right click to cancel. So this is the purpose of bone rolls. It gives you control over how do you want to position your bones or align your bones so it makes sense, so you can work with your character correctly. Now press the A key and do Alt R G S to just reset everything. Technically, we just have to do Alt R to reset the rotation. If you do Alt G S, it's just going to reset the location and scale if you had changed it. Okay, so that's how that works, right? So what we need to do is actually go back into edit mode and fix this bone roll. Right over here, Blender gives us the ability to change this. Go ahead and click over here, type in 0 and enter. Now the question is, why have they done it this way? Okay, so to understand this, what you want to do is go over here and click on stick. Now notice that over here, this is the bone. Bones will always have length, and you can only rotate them on their head by clicking on the tail, right? And the axis is always going to be displayed on the tail. Now notice that over here, if we want to rotate on the axis that is being displayed over here, we need to make sure that we switch to normal. This is a requirement. You can't switch to local because the local is this axis that is being displayed on the armature, right? That's not what we want to use. We want to use normal, so it uses this. Anyways, go ahead and click over here. So now when you press the R key, press the X key 2 times, you're rotating on the bone on its head on the X axis. If you press the R key, press the Z key 1 time, then 2 times, you are rotating. Right now, notice what it says on the header. When I press the R key, press the Z key 2 times. It's saying along normal. If you go and switch this to local, it's not going to work. If you press the R key, press the Z key 2 times, you see that it's just stuck, right? So make sure you know about this in edit mode. Now notice this. Now when we want to rotate on the y-axis, right, rotate around the y-axis, if we press the R key, press the Y key 2 times, you'll notice that Blender doesn't let us do anything with it. Right click to cancel. If we click on the body of this bone, press the R key, press the Y key 2 times, you'll notice that we cannot twist this bone, right? And this is where bone roll comes in. You can see that we can rotate the bone on its head by clicking on the tail on the x-axis, around the x-axis, around the z-axis. But if we want to rotate around the y-axis, Blender gives us this ability, right? That's what this bone roll is, okay? So that's how that works. Now what I want to show you over here, if I click to pose mode over here, is that the question is, well, why did we position the bones like this? Well, because Blender gives you this ability to position your bones or align your bones like this, it's going to come down to a discipline of saying to yourself that, okay, all the bones are always going to rotate on the x-axis, right? So you can see on the head, if we press the R key, press the X key 2 times, we're rotating on the x-axis. To open up his mouth, we can rotate by pressing the R key, press the X key 2 times, rotate on the x-axis, right? If we want to manipulate the tongue, press the R key, press the X key 2 times, rotate on the x-axis. Same thing for the neck, right? Same thing for the chest. Same thing for the spine, right? Same thing for the hips. Okay, now notice on the legs. Of course, you have to look at the entire leg, right? The dominant feature on the leg is going to be the knee and the foot, of course, right? So if you look at this dominant feature, you're not going to rotate the leg like this, right? It has to be done forward and backward. So of course it's going to be on the x-axis. So if you do Rx, the dominant, that's the dominant axis that we're using, x-axis, right? On the foot, x-axis, on the toe, x-axis. But you'll notice that when it comes to the arm, it's actually not going to be correct. Let's actually look at the shoulder first. Press the R key, X key. You can see that this is the dominant x-axis. Now on the shoulder over here, if we, not on the shoulder, I'm sorry, the arm, if you look at the elbow section over here, and if you press the R key, press the X key 2 times, you'll notice that this is not how the elbow moves. So this is where we have to treat this entire arm like the leg, meaning that you would have to switch to edit mode, click on all these bones, not the hand, and over here we have to fix the axis. This is where bone roll comes in handy. We can do Control R and simply rotate these bones like this. So now if we click over here and click on this, press the R key, press the X key, this is the dominant axis that we're using, right? And on the hand, you'll notice that if you click on the hand, the x-axis is going this way. Press the R key, X key 2 times, it's working. So of course we have to do this for the fingers. We want to make sure that, see over here, if we press the R key, X key, it's not right. So we would have to fix the roll of these bones to make sure that the x-axis is going horizontally like this. That's the idea over here. Now the other thing that you'll notice is that why is the z-axis over here pointing forward? Now the basic idea or the concept behind this is that you have your dominant axis that you're going to rotate on, and then you're going to have your major movements and minor movements. So the z-axis is basically, here we're stating in our definition is that the z-axis is the dominant movement and the opposite z is the minor movement. Here on the jaw, dominant, minor. Neck, dominant, minor. Look at the z-axis, right? So you'll notice that on the legs, the z-axis is pointing backwards, and it should, because when you look at this knee joint over here, this is the dominant axis, and of course this is minor because there's no way it can go this way. Now you'll notice on the foot, this is going up, but this should be the dominant axis, right? And this is minor. But does it matter if the z-axis is pointing up? No, it doesn't. Right? But it's good to be disciplined about this. So if we click over here on this foot and actually come in over here, type in 0, or you can just manually make it any angle that you want. Now if you click over here, it's just a mindset. Here when we rotate this, you can see the z is pointing down, dominant and minor. But for the toes, here I'm going to say that I want the dominant axis to be up. So here the z is going up and this is minor. That's all this is. Now if you look at the arm over here, you'll notice it's the same thing, right? Z-axis is pointing forward. If we press the X key 2 times, dominant movement and minor, right? So we would of course have to change this on the hand, make it point down. So anyways, that's the idea behind a bone roll. So here I'm just going to reload the file, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.